Hey, John Gilroy here. Stephen R. Covey popularized the phrase, start with the end in mind. For the federal government, the end in mind is increasing efficiency. Let's take a look at using AI agents to automate systems and derive that much desired efficiency. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator in the virtual studio today. Is Mia Jordan, industry advisor for Salesforce. Don't have to spell that out, Mia. Everyone knows Salesforce, don't they?
I hope so. Absolutely, they do.
Yeah. What they don't know is how to reduce cost and increase efficiency in federal technology. And that's what you're all about. I went to your LinkedIn profile. Wow. If anyone can do it, you can do it. And that's why I'm going to just step back and maybe, work it out for our listeners and say, okay, this is what Salesforce basically does. And here's how we can automate systems. And I want to talk about, okay, what are you going to automate? How do you determine the repetitive tasks? When to get humans involved, those pesky humans, when not to get them involved. And so let's just open this up and just give us maybe a quick outline of Salesforce. And changed a lot in 3 or 4 years I've known the company. And so tell us about this agentic AI and AI position they're taking.
So let me reintroduce Salesforce to you
Good.
as the world's #1 AI CRM. And we are super excited about Agentforce. If you've been following us, or if you a few months ago, if you sat down and watched the Super Bowl, you found out about Agentforce, right?
Yeah.
And so with Agentforce, we've created the first ever platform for building and deploying autonomous AI agents that are fully integrated into the systems that government already relies on. So what does that mean? So let me dispel a myth. Agentforce is more than a chatbot. Agents can do things like summarize child welfare cases, schedule appointments, guide small business owners through permitting, accelerate grant proposals, automate high volume, error prone tasks like eligibility checks and form submissions. We are thrilled, and I'm excited to be here with you today, John, because Agentforce is now FedRAMP High and purpose built for the public sector. So that means we're going to help agencies scale through what we call trusted digital labor. And so what we mean by that is it's secure, it's strategic, and it's incredibly effective. And the coolest part is that it is meeting the highest security standards, making it deployable today, and that we're no longer going to just be stuck in pilot mode.
That's the Super Bowl in this town. FedRAMP High. I mean, it's a Super Bowl, man. I mean, not everyone gets in the Super Bowl, and very few companies actually get to that level. And so I think what we're trying to reinforce is, yeah, we got you covered. We can do many different levels, and this is one level because we're experiencing this. I sat down with one of your colleagues, Paul Tatum, maybe last month or two, and I tried to come up with an analogy. I said a lot of people are trying to use these agents, and they're just falling off the rails. They're getting all kinds of trouble. And I said, maybe it's kind of like bowling, where you have those guardrails that come up. And what Salesforce does is, hey, we're the guardrails for your bowling, because you're not going to get a gutter ball if you have the guardrails up. And if you use Salesforce, you're not going to get in big trouble, because I see companies that are not Salesforce and organizations, individuals trying things that there's trouble. I'm not going to name names, but you've seen it. I've seen it too,
Sure.
Mia.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I talk to customers about often is that when they're considering implementing Agentforce, is that, you really need to look for opportunities where your staff are burning the most time. But let me be very clear. We are not looking to help our customers automate inefficiency, right? We ultimately want to replace it. So we're thinking about things like where tasks are repetitive, rule-based, and high volume. Think about areas where there are bottlenecks, that frustrate both your employees and your constituents. Think about there are a lot of opportunities in government. I think John, that I'm a former government, spent almost 12 years in government. And so there are lots of opportunities for areas where there's a ton of copy and paste and a lot of work between disconnected systems. I'll give you an example of where we see Agent Force right now really proving its value. And that is the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. They recently deployed Agent Force to automate licensing workflows, where they issued over 114,000 licenses in 2 years, which was a 35% increase. That means people were getting hired faster, and they put $54 million in wages back into the economy. So the key here is that, we want to help our customers prioritize where automation will reduce friction and deliver immediate value.
So, Mia, once potential tasks are identified, how should federal agencies approach organizing their data, workflows, and existing IT infrastructure to prepare for the integration of AI agents?
So this is where I think it gets really exciting, because once an agency has identified those high friction workflows, the next step then is to prepare their data and their processes. So remember, I said, we don't want to automate inefficiency. But the best part about Agent Force is that it works best when it's connected to trusted, unified data. So let me introduce to the audience, John, Data Cloud. Agent Force runs on Data Cloud. And that means that you can bring in real-time data from any system and make it immediately usable. So that's critical, because agents can only act if they have trusted and real-time information. So let me define what an agent is for the audience so that it is fully understood as we continue to talk about Agent Force. So we define an agent first by the agent's role. Secondly, the knowledge it needs, that's data. The actions it's allowed to take, meaning what do you want the agent to do? And then guardrails. So think about guardrails for escalation. This is where you can either have an autonomous agent or an agent that actually needs to go and check in with a human, very much like think about a new employee. You give them a set of tasks, and then they have to come back to the manager and say, hey, is this what you were thinking? Is this how you want it done? And then the last piece of what defines an agent is the channel that you actually want that agent to work on. And that's Slack, Salesforce, or even any kind of external portals. So that's like the how an agent is built at its foundational level. We call this a composable structure, because that then makes Agent Force really easy to deploy. And even easier to evolve as, say, the tasks change, or the data changes, or even the guardrail changes, where the agent may get really good at a task and I no longer need to check in with the human. So what does this mean ultimately? It means that structure is what allows our customers to get to go live a whole lot faster, lower technical debt, and they're able to scale these agents as their operations need to scale.
I think many of our listeners can understand simple repetitive tasks. I mean, that's pretty much a no-brainer.
Sure.
When it moves up the chain to more complicated tasks besides simple automation. And so,
Yeah.
So does Mia have to come in and put her thinking cap on and figure out, well, these 5 processes, these 3 we automate and these 2 we don't. So humans have to come in here and look at what the long-term impact might be on this automation.
So think about this, is that the differentiator, again, between a bot and an agent is that an agent is capable of reasoning. Agent Force is built on the Atlas reasoning engine. And so that's what makes Agent Force a huge differentiator, right? Or makes it very different from other products in the market. So when you ask me about, simple tasks, let's then escalate that to more advanced reasoning. So think about examples for government where they can match constituents to the right programs. That requires reasoning. The agent goes and looks at your profile and says, hey, based on your profile, you're not just eligible for this program, but there's a multitude of programs, kind of like your credit card. When you think about credit card ads, it takes some information about you and then it says, hey, we think that these 10 credit cards are right for you. And these are the proposed interest rates for each of those. I think we've all seen something like that, right?
Yeah,
The other
yeah.
part is that agents can, with advanced reasoning, they can actually track things like grantee performance. So when a grant is issued, there's all these key performance indicators that a grantee has to meet. Well, agents can track those things. Analyze retirement data to generate, say, like personalized retirement plans. And a real example is Unity Environmental University. They have an agent called Una,
Hmm.
and that Una registers students now 12 times faster than what used to be the traditional registration time period. It also saves the student advisors 17 hours a week. And Una is evolving into a personalized digital guide. So, what that means is that we'll now go from financial aid to career prep. So, when we are talking to our customers about where they want to automate, and because of this advanced reasoning engine, we often say, think about where people overwhelmed. What would faster insight change, or how would it change the outcome? And then where does personalization matter? Because scale has made it impossible. Automate those things.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, it's taken to the next step. It is uh, beyond what 3 years ago I would have said, Mia, get out of here.
Right, right.
You can just one little tiny thing. If over 13, then do that. It's
Yes,
amazing. We are recording this, and this interview will air probably the first week in June. And there's some big announcements coming up. We can't talk about it, but I can put it in the show notes. Do you want to maybe
yes.
hint a little bit about Mia?
Oh, well, Agent Force is now FedRAMP High.
Wow.
We are so excited about that. What is exciting about this is that most federal agencies, Department of Defense, Intel community, all of government is looking for ways to become more efficient, ways to do more with less. And so, I'd like to leave our listeners with this. Agent Force isn't a sidecar, right? It's not experimental. It is what we call digital labor, and it is grounded in our Salesforce values, and it is designed and purpose built for government. And so this new FedRAMP high authorization allows now all of government to stop automating for automation's sake and start building better government experiences.
And I'll put a link in the show notes to that announcement because that's kind of an important deal.
Yes,
Before we started recording this interview, you talked about a graphic or an image that you thought might help the listeners understand this whole
yes.
transition of what to automate. What I'll do is I'll put that in the show notes as well. But what does the graphic depict?
Those where I went through the role, knowledge, actions, guardrails, and
Oh,
channel.
yeah,
It
yeah.
shows those across the screen. So now you're not just hearing me because I'm not like defining it exactly how it's on the screen, but that reference I think will be really good during that
Yeah,
portion.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
when you listen to this again, you could just play along at home and go to the show notes and see the image. It comes in great.
Yes.
I think the real problem here is some ethical considerations and what one human may think should be automated, maybe a different human may not think should be automated. And so, how do you establish guidelines on the ethical and secure application for AI?
Where when I described how to build an agent, this is where what I would say guardrails meet governance. So, Agent Force gives you full control over when an agent can do these three things. One, when an agent can simply observe. The second one is where an agent can actually propose, say, a next best action to take based on, say, a case you're working on. Or the third thing is when you want the agent to actually act. So observe, propose, or act. And just as importantly, when it hands off, right, to a human being. So this is where those guardrails, say, let's use like sensitive workflows like child welfare or permitting, environmental permitting. The agent might prep and summarize, but then always escalate for approval. There's other scenarios like appointment setting or document checks where the agent can actually act autonomously. So I hope those are good examples when I'm telling you about those three different things. So this is not about replacing the workforce. Like, I want to just set that straight for the record. This is about augmenting it, right? So this is where public servants, like I used to be, can then now focus on the work that truly requires human insight, human empathy, and human judgment. But AI should never remove the human. It should just make space for them, right? To do what
Yeah.
only they can do.
Yeah. Mia, 2 weeks ago, I was up in Baltimore for an FC event, recording interviews from the floor. And I sat down, I had the photographer there, the audio engineer, I had the prep, the microphones, everything's perfect. And I said, "This is John." Bang, fire alarm went off. Unforeseen circumstances, you know? So we get Mia is working for the government and she has this nice little, everything's really good and efficient, and bang, the fire alarm goes off, or you get bad data, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's an event. And so is Salesforce flexible enough to handle unforeseen circumstances? I walked outside with 6,000 people.
Yeah. One of the things that I say, and this might be controversial, it might not. But right now, government is, in many cases, doesn't have AI, and humans are still extending benefits. Constituents are still receiving services, and all of those things. And they're using data and they're making corrections along the way. Again, we look at Agent Force and AI as additional digital labor. I'd like to quote our CEO, Mark Benioff, when he said that this is the last generation where managers will only manage human beings. The next generation of leaders will manage both humans and agents together. And I thought that that was really a stirring thought and prediction of what is to come. And so this is why these guardrails are so important. This is why you govern them just as you would human beings. And so, we're really encouraging our customers to not let the fear of AI come in and settle in their organizations, but to use it alongside the humans that are already making judgments and decisions on services and benefits that are happening right now when the data isn't necessarily perfect.
So, Mia, I got a non-AI, non-Salesforce question for you. And
Okay.
maybe it'll use a lot of your skill set that people don't realize. So on your LinkedIn profile, on the top, it
Uh-oh.
says lead change, break barriers. Watch
Yes,
out. Mia's coming into break. Maybe the barrier is, you don't realize how inefficient the way you're doing it is now, and you can save 35% or whatever. And so breaking barriers, it has to be done with a certain carefulness, because you can't just
absolutely.
waltz in there and pound on tables. Look, I could save you $5 million. So how do you break barriers in a federal environment, especially in this difficult technology situation we're in now?
Yeah, well, this is where, not being afraid to fail is so important. And what that means is that, what is the saying? Let's not let perfect be the enemy of good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, you know, with this technology, we are talking about not deploying things in the wild, right? But with constraints. You mentioned that bowling analogy earlier, where you have the bumpers up, right? My kids use the bumpers, right? These guardrails are exactly that. They are the bumpers. And so we encourage our customers to find a use case internally, test it, right? Test it, deploy it, try to break it, try to fool, right? The agent in many cases, right? Do everything you can so that when you launch out into the public space, that you have certainty and you have a sense of calm, but that also that you have the ability to roll back. I was a former CIO, and there's a term that we use in deployments called hot fixes, right? Where we discover that there are problems once we go live. those hot fixes are fixing those problems, right? Real time. And so certainly you have to find the right use cases, right, for those kinds of things. But I don't think it's a barrier, right, ultimately, because there's a lot of opportunity to test things internally before you ever go external. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, the more interviews I do, and I talk with different people about different situations, and increasingly, one of the barriers in the federal government is this silo mentality of this is how we do it. We're not, so I'm
Mm,
trying to get to the word collaboration, and
yes.
you know, I would
Ah,
think that you could take an agency that has XYZ problem. Okay, register a person for something, and then an action takes place. But there's got to
yeah.
be another agency that has very similar well, a person registers something, and that's why this happens. And so
Yes.
it is possible to use Salesforce and talk to me and go, well, look at labor, we did this, and we can just use it here. So it's it's not fail early, fail often. It's they failed early, and we're going to use their
Right.
code
We learn from
over
them.
there because it works. It just
Yes.
seems like the whole communication and collaboration, it feeds into this approach that no, we're not. We don't have to have a whole new environment. We don't have to get recertified. It's the Salesforce environment. All we do is just we change the names to protect the innocent and move it over there. And then the workflow is there because it's been vetted and proven. So that
Yes.
alone, just think about writing code and implementing code and getting it approved. I mean, it's already approved, right? I mean, it
Right.
seems like a natural for Salesforce.
Well, this is absolutely. So I actually am the co-chair of the Salesforce Federal Community of Practice.
Ah,
And
communication. Ah.
communication, right? And community, right? Imagine that. And so quarterly we bring federal federal government leaders and even non-leaders, right, together to learn from each other about like what are we doing, at commerce, what are we doing at labor, what are we doing at ag, and how can we then share those learnings or even share those solutions. That's another important point about platforms is the ability to share your products is something that we'd like to see more in government, right? And so platforms like Salesforce ultimately allow for those things. A real example is FDIC and USDA. FDIC built a really cool collaboration app that they ultimately shared with USDA. What was the ROI on that? What was the cost of that? The cost of that was meetings to agree, right? Cost very little to then implement for USDA. And so we want to see a lot more of that. You're absolutely right. Community, collaboration, and the breaking down of silos, bringing everyone to the table, I think is going to be a real game changer in terms of how we use AI
Yeah, yeah.
moving forward.
When I watch NFL, there's always an ex-player. An ex-player really has a lot of insight on how this game runs. And I look at your
Sure.
background. No, you're an ex-player. I mean, you should have the
That's,
T-shirt. You should go to those meetings with the T-shirt. Yeah, I'm one of you. So you've been in CI. You've been beat up and knocked around and
oh,
had
goodness.
maybe funds changed. And so
Yes.
all of a sudden, if you walk into that room, it's going to be okay. She knows my problems. She understands. And I don't have budget for this, but I want to accomplish that. And so why don't
Yes.
I reuse this code there? It's not like, speaking Russian to no, it's like
Uh,
Portuguese to Portuguese. It's the same language. And so and I don't know how people are going to survive in this world of rapid change. And I'm not going to go into anything else, but it's how else can you do it besides by relying on how other people have done it? Well, what did you do? Oh, yeah, well, I don't have any money. I don't have money either. I did this, X, Y, and Z. What happened to you? And this is going to be off record. This is going to be an email or telephone. It's going to be sitting with
sure.
Mia having a coffee and going, well, I don't know, how did you do this? And it's just, I think that's the way to overcome some AI challenges where,
For
because the
sure.
challenges my listeners face right now, Mia, you haven't seen them in 10, 15 years. I mean, the challenges now are just astounding. And so you have to go back to your community and go, well, I don't know, how did Mia do it? And
Yes.
it's a,
That curiosity, there's another C, right? Being curious, always be curious, ABC, right? In terms of, there's success happening. Sure, it may be happening in pockets, but you have to get out of your bubble and go and have that collaboration, have those meetings, those coffees, those brown bag lunches where you're saying, hey, product company, hey, CIO at this agency, come in and talk to us about how you've overcome these challenges. I think that's really necessary right now. There's no reason to recreate the wheel right now. There is
Why?
success happening.
And if you're looking for efficiency, this is the most efficient way to do it. Well, we've got the wheel here. You don't have to,
Yes.
or maybe, and there's going to be so much parallel in similar situations all through the government. So Mia,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball and gaze into the future
Oh,
and tell me
goodness.
exactly. No, 4 or 5 years from now, people are they're changing the way we look at efficiency, and maybe they're what are they saying? Breaking barriers and leading change. And so, are you optimistic in the next 4 or 5 years? Do you think it's going to really happen, or is it just going to be the same headbutting technique we see now?
So I think that there are some signs that we can see right now. I'll use the GSA OneGov strategy. I think that that is going to have a major impact on how government buys technology, how it solves the problem of long drawn out procurements, long drawn out delivery, and ultimately making government not just more efficient, but ultimately more effective and ultimately more proactive, right? And I think ultimately that is that's what constituents want. They want a proactive government, not a government they have to wait on, but one that understands them and understands their needs and knows them, right? That is the standard that I think over the next 3 to 4 years, as you say, that we should all be anticipating.
I opened up this interview with a quote from Stephen R. Covey, talked about the end in mind, but you just
Yes,
articulated what the end in mind is increased
let's
service
hope.
to citizens without an increased cost.
That's
And
right.
it seems like it's the best approach I can see, and working with humans and figure out this complexity, because it's going to change again. And a year from now, Miss Mia, we may have a different conversation about different things, but if you're flexible and adaptable and keep that end in mind, you'll adapt to the situation and maybe have coffee with me and just ask dumb questions. Here's a dumb question. I've never heard that before. Gilroy asks the dumb questions.
Never, never.
You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Mia Jordan, Industry Advisor for Salesforce. Thanks, Mia.
Thank you, John.